for the first time this season. 3 hours of GT action is go.
It's very tight as they come down. Group of cars coming in. This has all got trouble written all over it. This is G3 cars.
Drop downhill there, head towards the Aqua Minerale. Imola, of course.
There's another one off through the gravel. As wide as possible as they drop downhill, putting that from the inside line. Yes,
Oh, he did.
through he goes.
Hello everyone, welcome along to Apex Online Racing's Sprint Cup Series. This is round 5 at Barcelona, and my goodness, I hope everyone's brought their brollies and their wellies, because it's looking very British out there this evening as opposed to European. It's going to be a bit of a wet one here, and qualifying has just started, and I am joined in the booth once more by John. Good evening, John.
Good evening to you, Tim, and yeah, it is looking like a pretty soggy racetrack for our drivers today, isn't it? And, you know, the last time that we had some really exciting wet weather conditions was, I think, all the way back at round 2 in Kota, as well as also, I think, maybe as Hungaroring as well. And it brings out such a dynamic in the field and really lets some of kind of that raw talent in each cockpit shine. So it's going to be a great one tonight.
Just noticed there's actually yellow flags and a crash during qualifying there. So a couple of cars off. Car number 15 went flying off, and someone else involved there as well. Sort of mid-pack. I think it was everyone slowing down before they got to the hairpin, sort of stacking up. But
yeah, I'm just having a quick look, see if I can catch that. It's Alessio Mellis. I was about to say, you know, he was our race winner at Kota. And, oh dear, yes, it was Mellis that completely caused that contact, speared straight into the back of one of the BMWs. And, yeah, that's not the way you want to be starting a qualifying session whatsoever.
No, it's definitely not. To be fair, there's lots of cars still going very slowly. It's one of those issues with qualifying. Obviously, everyone wants to give themselves a little bit of room, but everyone leaves the pits at the same time, all stack up. The general rule is that you cannot come to a complete stop, and you really shouldn't be sort of causing other people behind you to have issues, but lots of yellow flags still going on that chicane at the moment. So sticking on board with car number 112 for now, who is our first person out on a flyer, and this is Seminara. The BMW looking fairly well planted in these absolutely torrential conditions, but I do fear, with how slow everyone's going through that final chicane, he may get to the end of the track and find himself stuck in traffic. As there's so many people here this evening, it's an absolutely stacked grid. How are we looking? 37 cars on track all at once, and although Barcelona feels like a big track, as you can see, it's quite a well stacked track. Lots of corners, lots of braking zones, plenty of places, and I think that is the last car going through the chicane now for their first flyer, car number 912. And well, here we go. It's Seminara's already near the end of the nearly completed a flying lap. He's already nearly caught up, so yeah, really is going to be a difficult qualifying for everyone, especially in these wet conditions. Everyone trying to be respectful and giving a bit of a space, but it is going to be hard here this evening.
Yeah, Barcelona, this Catalonia circuit is such a tricky and technical one inherently itself. Obviously has been, for a number of years, a somewhat of a test track for variety series, as a Seminar Championship leader is about to set the benchmark in the qualifying session of 52.230. In the BMW, we saw yesterday in Tier 1 as Neuwirth goes into the 51s very quickly in the Aston Martin, and not to be outdone is Ermakov in the 117 Honda. So we'll start to see the times already tumbling and giving us initial impression as Fender in another one of the Ferraris goes up to the top of the time sheets, and he was looking particularly quick actually in that practice session, so it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. Ermakov was looking pretty rapid at Bathurst as well, but had a torrid race there, so he'll be looking to bounce back as well. And you know, when we've got these wet weather conditions, the Ferraris, the Porsches were looking particularly strong last night. Of course, there was a BMW on the podium as well with Fischer in Tier 1, so that could be a pretty good platform. And those more stable, more predictable kind of layouts, the front engines, slightly more relaxed on the way the power goes down for the Beamers and the Astons, they do start to maybe gain a bit of time in these wet weather conditions relative to their dry pace. So keep an eye out for some of those other cars on the grid and making it a bit more shuffled than perhaps we might ordinarily expect it if we had a dry qualifying and race this evening.
Yeah, so definitely what you're saying there about those sort of more stable sort of a base definitely makes a big difference. Like I say, over the space of an hour, going absolutely at your limit. Very difficult to keep some of these cars in check. I say the Ferrari definitely being one of those cars. It'll be interesting to see how the Audi gets on this evening. Oh, there's a couple of them here already. Again, we spoke about it with the traction control, quite aggressive. Oh, kind of a 24 yellow flag there. Don't think anyone else is involved. I think just all on their own.
Try to see, I'll have a look at that. Was Jay Fang, so driver second in the championship. Also Neuwirth on an absolute blinder at the moment. Podens is going to be challenged though, and the Aston actually makes it temporarily an Aston 1-2 between Neuwirth and Podens. So very good laps there, well down into the 51s now. So times are definitely coming down in these early stages.
Yeah, got a great lap coming up actually from Victor Martin. 0.8 up on his time. That's putting himself well inside the top 5 if he can put that together. Currently running in 14th place, but really interesting to see what he can do. Yellow flags appearing all over the track. 3rd place for Martin. Absolutely fantastic lap. Other people on a flyer at the moment. Alessio Mellis, 0.2 up. Oh, Robin Moe as well, it's 0.5 up on his lap. So there's lots of improvements to be made here. And all the way down the grid as well, we've got people, here we go, we've got Richie. 3.1 seconds up into 7th place. Brilliant little lap from him. And the way the times are rolling in, obviously being the wet conditions as well, it definitely sort of throws a bit of a spanner in the works for people's qualifying. Normally you'd see pretty consistent lap times out of people, but obviously where it's wet and there's this excessive traffic, it's really going to shake it up. That you could be the fastest driver out there this evening and just not able to find that perfect line. It's going offline to pass a slower driver. Going to be very difficult here this evening in the wet. Although it might end up like Hungaroring and be wet in qualifying and then strangely dry for the rest of the race. Which would be I
think unfortunately actually for Barcelona, I think we're guaranteed 100% rain throughout qualifying and the race. So I think if nothing else, although the wet weather conditions maybe aren't something that these drivers, you know, some drivers they really like the wet weather, others aren't too keen, but at least they have predictable conditions. This is what they would have practiced for. So if nothing else, that helps them kind of gain a bit of confidence. Fender was on an absolutely massive lap time and then invalidated over the final chicane, but he was half a second up for a moment, which would have been really into the low 51s there. And then you've got Florence, you've got Richie's on a big time as well, few tenths up on his personal best. So Florence and Richie may be able to challenge towards the front, but interesting, Aston Martin's 1-2, Honda 3-4, but that could very well change in the coming few minutes with the likes of these Porsches improving at the tail end of the top 10.
Yeah, jumped on board with Richie now, just coming through that chicane. Really good run, just coming through New Holland corner now as well. Oh, very brave on that wet curbing on the outside, giving it absolutely everything. Massive improvement up into 2nd place. No one able to take away Neuwirth's 1st place lap, though. really good lap
someone
from
that
him.
could do Fender.
Oh,
He's already
yeah.
going purple in Sector 1. That Ferrari is looking pretty handy in the hands of the number 9 car. Of course, Angus Fender, real-life GT experience from him, so probably also feeling relatively at home, being a British man himself. These grey skies, thundery, wet weather conditions, probably feeling like a normal Sunday drive for him. So yeah, so interesting to see how he gets on in the Ferrari, just going in towards the turn 10 hairpin at the moment, but he's kept pretty nicely up on his delta, and it all went wrong in the final chicane last time for him, so if he gets that neat and tidy, this could end up being the first lap in the 50s.
It very easily could be. He's 600th of a second up at the moment, so it all comes down to getting this chicane perfect.
Oh, a little deep.
Just misses the apex, doesn't he? But hopefully he can get the power down, not lose too much. Really is brave through here. How much can he possibly keep the foot flat to the floor? Possibly huge improvement coming.
Good.
There it is, into the 150s. Amazing effort. A 150.980, and he is happy with that. Pulls over immediately. Absolutely dominating the front of the grid now. Nearly half a second in front of Neuwirth, who currently is down on the lap. I think he's just having maybe a bit of a warm-up lap. Yeah, just setting up for a flyer now, I think. Christian Podens is flicking back and forth between a fast lap and a slow lap. Trying to see if there's anyone further down the grid that's on any kind of large improvements.
Seminara was on a 2/10th improvement, but then invalidated it in the final sector. So our championship leader currently all the way down in 21st position. So that is not where that BMW wants to be. Of course, won at Hungaroring, but yeah, right now not an enviable position for the BMW driver. And when you compare that to the likes of Josh Waring, P3 in the standings, only 10 points behind Seminara, and he's currently right now up in P6. So the Honda driver managing to keep things nice, neat and tidy, a lot easier in these tricky wet weather conditions. Near the top of the grid though, Podens on a relative improvement, 3/10 as he heads in towards turn 12 now. But this final sector is very tricky. We even saw Fender leave a little bit left on the table on his epic lap time going into this final chicane for Podens, though. That's, I think that's a little bit too far the other way. He's taking a chunk of curb over that inside apex. Gets the power down relatively nicely, though. And I think this could be good enough for the front row, for the 69 car. And as he hits time beam, it is within just a couple of tenths of a second of that lead Ferrari. But still some work to be done if they want to challenge the British driver.
Yeah, that was some seriously good work. I think, like you said, just a little bit too much curb, but managed to hold it together. Neuwirth, again, on a slight improvement, only 0.1. Currently running
Giacomelli in the Aston goes up to P9, all the way from outside the top 30. So that was a big lap time from the Italian.
This is what I'm saying about this thing of where it's so wet. These really fast drivers might only ever get to set one truly fast lap, and it is very wet out there. It's not just a little bit damp, it's not a bit soggy, it is full-blown torrential. And Neuwirth stays in third place for now. A couple of people onto improvements further down the grid.
Seminara has just done a much more respectable lap time from the championship leader, up into P5 now for the BMW. So that was a much smarter lap time, although immediately was displaced. I think, oh no, that was just a weird thing on my overlay. No, it did come through eventually. Who was that just jumped up into the top
is it not?
5?
Into
it was,
yeah.
yes, the Honda driver. Yeah, great lap time from him.
Yeah, sort of he's further down the grid, obviously keeping a little eye on the sector numbers further down, but it's quite difficult with all these different numbers going everywhere at the moment. And as I said, we've got very fast drivers out of position. Oh, I was on board with Mellis then. Huge slide as he came out of Capsa. A little bit too much exit curb. He's just about holding it together though. He's still up on his time, or he was for a moment. I think he may have lost that time now. Oh no, it's still 0.2 up. Manages to hold on to it, so that's going to be a little improvement. Currently running in 15th place. Again, there's some...
Jay Fang just behind him as well has got about the same margin, so I think both of these drivers will be trying to shuffle their way up the order, and they're both kind of involved in this championship fight. So yeah, these are important qualification times right now from the Ferrari and the BMW.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to be an easy case of passing anybody tonight either with this wet weather. So 16th place, jumps up to 12th place, and Fang He jumped up to 7th place. Big improvement for both those drivers. Bang will be pleased with that. Getting inside the top 10, it really does mean there's a lot less traffic in front of you. Robin Moe having an improvement as well. Currently running in 15th. Another driver to keep an eye out for. Some big drivers way inside the 20s. Got Stachaki and Niles. Both of them running currently in 26th and 27th.
Bart Raven, sorry to cut you off there. 51 car has just, I think, had a bit of an odd moment. I think went wide on the entry in towards turn 13, and then as a very awkward place on the circuit, and now is just parked up. Has got going again on the exit of that final chicane, but yeah, just showing how tricky these conditions are.
Yeah, actually looked like a over-rotation as he went through Europe car. So just over-rotated the car and managed to get off the track. But yeah, just you see these guys are absolutely pushing it. And it is what happens when it's wet. You are going to have these problems. And trying to rejoin as well in the wet is going to be an absolute challenge. So Bart Raven should have been far enough away from the start line to at least this still be a valid lap. Only 12 seconds left, so this will be his final chance to improve as well. People all over the place putting improvements. Ermakov and Florence currently running in 5th and 6th. They both with improvements. In fact, Florence is 0.2 up. Still very early in the lap.
Also, Podens has just gone into the pit lane, so no further improvement for the 69 Aston Martin. Same for Neuwirth, so neither of the Aston Martins will be improving any further. But I tell you what, Angus Fender is a 10th up on his lap time. Make that 2. Got an absolute blinder of a run through the exit of turn 9 there. Trying to spot his braking point in towards turn 10. We know that there's time left on the table for this Ferrari as well, so this could be a big lap time to cement that pole position, as Alessio Mellis, I think, just crossed the timing beam and goes up into P3. So great lap time from him, but I think the lead Ferrari of Angus Fender may be about to go even faster.
Bit of a slide there, though. A little bit of a slide there for Eurocar. Can he hold it together? No, there we go. Too much inside curve. And he is down on his sector time now. Ooh, Max Florence still pushing to try and make an improvement. Coming through this final sector now, just coming into the final chicane. In this split liveried Honda. 0.4 up at the moment. Massive improvement. This will be ginormous gain for him. Currently running in 8th place. Stretching the legs of that Honda towards the line. Up into 4th place, 2nd row on the grid. A brilliant position to be going into the race. So a couple of other people still coming across the line. There'll be that final shuffle. I don't think we're going to see any real changes inside the top 10 at this time.
Yeah, Rangers just made a bit of a mistake out of the exit at the final chicane there. Went wider than he would have wanted to have done. And yeah, won't improve. But what a session there from Angus Fender, the only driver into the 50s, and he's done it by a decent margin as well over the rest of the field. Fantastic session from the number 9 car.
Yeah, really strong effort. I mean, that really does just go to show what you can do in some of these cars, especially the Ferrari. I mean, it's a very skittish car in the dry, let alone in the wet. And I would say probably a little bit of that real-world racing experience coming into play there. And just letting everyone know that he's not just good behind the wheel in a real car, but he can also do it on the sim as well. Right, so let's run through our grid for this evening. So sitting in pole position is Angus Fender. Brilliant effort from him in qualifying. Then we have Kristen Podens in 2nd, Alessio Mellis in 3rd, Max Florence in 4th place. 5th place is Neuwirth. 6th place is Richie. Ermakov in 7th. Avalaise in 8th, Jay Fang in 9th, and rounding out the top 10 is Casangina. So down into 11th place is Seminara. So he probably would have been more happy in being inside the top 10, but just outside, still a really good effort and still a really good chance to get through the grid. 12th place is Josh Waring. 13th place is Brewer. 14th is Jack O'Malley. Robin Moe in 15th place. Victor Martin, 16th. Kevin Niles down in 17th place. Stachaki down in 18th place. Reinders in 19th. And Tarin in 20th position. So coming into the 20s now. Rihesky, 21st place. We've got 2 Rainers. Have I read 2? No, I've got Reinders and Rainers. Apologies. 22nd place for Rayner. 23rd place for Corner Crack. Nicholas Hurt in 24th. 25th place is Fazakas, not doing so well this evening, as we've seen him have some massive improvements in previous races, but obviously not feeling that the Lamborghini is the car out there this evening. Bart Raven, 26th position. Christian Steinhauser down in 27th. 28th is Rimbaud. 29th is Shops. And third place is previous fan favourite Van Meerveld. 31st place is Zikos. 32nd is Hans Peter. 33rd is Brunn. Matt York in 34th. And Marlon Andrade, who's a name I haven't seen much this season. 35th place. Alexa Gates running in 36th. And 37th is Rattiani. So there's some big names much further down the grid than I would have expected to see. I say, obviously, Alexa Gates just not having the evening she would have wanted in qualifying, down in 36th place after a really dominant performance in some previous races.
Yeah, got 5th out at Bathurst. Of course, the Mercedes is going to, that's a car that always lends itself to the mountain, and versus here at Catalonia and wet conditions, it is a trickier car to wheel. But, in contrast, Alejandro Avila, who did win out at Bathurst in the Mercedes, up inside the top 10. So it is possible to extract pace out of that car, but it is definitely tricky without a shadow of doubt. And yeah, Marlon hasn't been, I don't think, on the grid all season long. I did see him ping a message into the server asking about his ping, joining us from Brazil, of course, in the 742 car. And I do actually wonder if maybe he deliberately didn't participate in qualifying. I'm not too sure, just so that he could start a bit further back out the grid and hopefully not be part of any first lap chaos in that regard. But in terms of our championship protagonists, it's a really interesting setup. We saw things get a little bit mad yesterday in Tier 1, and when we consider the positions of Seminara starting outside of a top 10, Jay Fang just a little bit further ahead in P9, Josh Waring, where did he end up in all of that? Down in P12, so kind of all round about the same kind of position, but not really at the very tippy top of the grid. It's kind of new names that are making their way up at that end of the field. So it's going to potentially be a case of survival in these conditions for some of those main championship protagonists and just trying to get themselves through these early few laps, banking the points, because even if they don't have the raw pace to maybe be in the battle for the win today, they still need to score consistently if going into the final 2 rounds they want to be in with that chance of winning the Tier 2 championship.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than having a really big points deficit on any race. You just want to score something. You want to keep yourself, if you're going for the championship win, you want to keep yourself inside that top 10, top 5, ideally, every single race, just to really make sure you've got a decent cement base. So if you have a bad final race and you don't score many points, that's the last thing you want, is to lose the championship on the final race of the season. I mean, we've seen it before. We've seen drivers, like, over the years, where we really thought they were just going to completely dominate the whole season, and then they've had issues in the last 2 races, and it's all just fallen apart. Or real life issues come along and you just can't take part in those final races. And there is nothing more heartbreaking than all that hard work that goes into the season, all coming apart in those last 2 races. So this really is the final moment to really sort of put good foundations down for a championship win.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'll tell you what, there's one man inside this top 10 who could be looking to use this as an opportunity to bring himself back into the championship fight, and that is Richie in that 441 Porsche. Now, he had a bit of he had a fairly strong start to the season. He was leading the championship after the second round, getting a 4th and 2nd place with a fantastic final lap battle between himself and Mellis. Didn't quite manage to close out the victory over the Italian driver. And then Hungaroring, he had a very odd connection issue. I think there was a few unfortunate on that day, but him in particular, and that ends up DNFing him from that race. He had a top 10 finish at Bathurst last week, which, considering he's in that Porsche, was a fairly solid result. And he is one of the lead drivers right now inside of that top 10 group that is still in with a chance of being in this championship fight. So if he is able to come away from today with a decent result, and maybe if the likes of Seminara, Fang, Waring, Casangina have a slightly poorer day here at Catalonia, then the Dutch driver could look to bring himself a bit more into contention, but it all relies on making sure you keep your nose clean in the opening laps, you stay consistent in these very tricky wet conditions, and you keep it on the black stuff for the whole duration of those 60 minutes and stop getting any track limit warnings, which is very easy to do around here. The exit of turn 9 is quite often one that ends up playing into effect in that regard, and also sometimes the exit turn 16 in the wet weather conditions where you do tend to understeer a little bit. So it's going to be tricky for these guys, but I think we're going to be in for a cracking race.
Yeah, definitely think so. I think turns 1, 2 and 3 are going to be the real sort of edge of your seat, you know, skin of your teeth kind of moments. Really hoping that these first few turns can go well. I mean, even in the dry, you can see it's a very, very difficult circuit with left and rights, one after another. But the final run to the line now, everyone's stacking up on the helicams. We can get a full view of the grid. It is ginormous. Lights go green. There's still people coming around the final turn. Brilliant start by Fender. And to be fair, Podens gets a great start as well, already up into second place. Oh, and Fender having to go defensive against Podens. How many are they going to go wide into turn 1? Oh, nearly 3 wide.
There.
Poden goes super deep on a nudge.
Oh, Poden's off.
Oh, there is an incident, quite an incident. We've got cars all over the place.
Fang and Seminara caught up in that in the background as well.
And it's still going on.
There's a big collision in turn 3.
Oh dear, yeah. Beginning of turn 3 really has been quite the battlefield. I did say that all the way through turn 3 could be a problem. We've got cars everywhere returning to the pits. Cars 83 and 4. Car number 117 still stopped, and that has now returned. Oh, they're still going on up at turn 4.
Oh dear. Steinhauser, I think, was around.
Yeah, I think that was over the curb as well. Couldn't really do anything. Cars all over the place at the moment.
Yeah, Alexa Gates, I saw Marlon Andrade as well, getting caught up in all of that.
Someone who hasn't had any issues, though, is Alex Fender, pulled away quite significantly already. Timing screen throwing a bit of a wobbly and showing Ermakov in pole position at the moment, so we might have to wait for that to sort itself out. But top 15 seem like they've reasonably broken away. But this is the problem in these wet conditions. Oh, as they come down towards the hairpin, too wide through here. Everyone holding it together, currently keeping an eye on Seminara at the moment. And that BMW very much holding on for dear life. And it really is going to be a race of attrition if everyone doesn't calm down just a little bit. Alex Fender manages to... Oh, and actually, who was that in the background? I think that was Seminara went off.
Oh, and Arnaud towards turn 10 as well. But yeah, you're right, Seminara has dropped a position. And what is going on there? Giacomelli is already in the pits, and several drivers actually already in the pits, so they're choosing. We saw this actually in Tier 1 yesterday, where getting damage early on, because they know they're going to have guaranteed wet conditions for the rest of the race, they just want to get themselves out of traffic, new tyres on their cars, repair the damage, and then get back out on circuit as quick as possible.
Oh, Seminara took that position straight back into turn 1, out-dragged the corner crack, actually. Yeah, as again, we see the Porsche really struggling in a straight line. But yeah, drivers coming in, there was a lot of people that didn't necessarily get completely held up on track, but they definitely took on some damage. And as you said, they know it's going to be wet, might as well just make the most of it and just sit in there for the long haul, get themselves some free
further
air.
Contact. Sorry, Dennis Shops and Xavier Rumbaud heading through turn 4. I think that was into Repsol Curve, and it was Dennis Shops sent it down the inside in that number 11 Honda, and the Audi just got completely shoved down to the gravel. I'll tell you what though, Barnabas Fazekas is in P12 according to my overlay. We'll see in terms of how things update with that in just a moment. But the 995 Lamborghini driver, we've seen him do this time and time again, as he just sizes his way up through the field, lets everyone else go through all the chaos, and despite the fact that there's not a great deal of wet weather pace naturally inside that car, he is just able to navigate through the field, pick his way through, and he's gained about, I think, 13 positions in the opening lap.
You can't ever rule this person out, can you? You can't rule this man out. Fazekas, absolutely ridiculous. Massive improvements. I think he's running a different livery this week. I might be wrong. I thought he was running one of the different liveries, one of the blue liveries, Emil Frey Racing, but he's now running one of the in-game ones, K-Pax Racing. I'm not sure if he's appearing the same for you. It might
I think,
be so.
yeah, I do have the same at this end, so I think he has done a bit of a change. But bearing in mind, this man, P6 in the championship, he had a podium finish last time out at Bathurst with a tremendous drive in that Lamborghini. So, yeah, very much involved as Rangers and Corner Crack side by side on the run in towards turn 1. A little bit of contact between the 500 and 420. Still side by side on the exit as the Porsche tries to come back, and he does reclaim the position. I think actually Rangers may have backed out that one a little bit to concede that, although Corner Crack wide.
And there we go, he's taking him in again. And I think actually, is Corner Crack going to lose another position here to Niles? Maybe not quite. Manages to hold on to the position. I think that might have been a tactical sort of trying to get the switch back on him there from Rangers. I think that was a bit of a, I thought as well, I thought he'd just given the position up, but I think he knew he couldn't carry that kind of speed and just backed off slightly and then got the car back. Brilliant little bit of driving. Fazekas, another man we need to keep an eye on still, all over the back of Peter at the moment. Running the
Also, Hans-Peter is our biggest mover on the grid, actually. 21 positions gained for that number 5 Audi. And that is the way that you make your way through the field in the opening couple of laps. What a tremendous effort from the man that sits in P11 at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. I'm saying if he can keep up this kind of effort, he can very easily get himself inside the top 10 with no issues whatsoever. There's a battle's kind of going on all over the place, obviously being wet. The moves for positions can happen absolutely out of nowhere. Only one little mistake, it's very hard to get back on the racing line. Just sticking with Fazekas and Peter for the minute. These two really squabbling. A little move there, possibly from Fazekas, just showing his nose. He might be close enough to have the toe down into turn 1. I mean, technically the Audi and the Lamborghini are the exact same engine, but they are very different cars to drive, I would say.
Oh, sorry, a little bit further down the field, we've got contact between Gates and Andrade heading through the chicane. The Mercedes muscling the Audi out of the way on the exit of turn 15 there, and then also Arnaud Brunner was able to sneak through and gain another position and all of that, but yeah, whether or not there may be some words between those two, I have to wait and see, as I think Fazekas has just got the position made on Hans-Peter through that opening complex of corners on the lap of the Lamborghini driver, now in towards P11. So another position gained for the Hungarian. What a fantastic opening couple of laps from him. And that is a car that is not naturally quick in the rain. It is a tricky one to extract pace of, extract pace from, in the dry, let alone in these wet conditions around here at Barcelona. So he is doing a phenomenal job and already starting to try to close in on those top 10 positions.
Yeah, already starting to make a big difference. I think that Alexa Gates issue, along with the Audi, I think that was two injured cars, sort of just trying to keep them going. Oh, Avalage trying to go around the outside of Casangina down at the hairpin. Gets a switch back and goes through. Amazing move there. Can he hold on to the inside? No, he can't. Oh, but a contact onto the grass. And secondary contact. Yeah, Avalage
and Casangina got sent off by the BMW. Daniel Brewer, as he came through, unfortunately just added a little bit of contact with that awkward line for the Porsche. And Casangina, for all of that fighting, got sent completely around on the exit of turn 12 there.
Yeah, going back to watch that now on the replay, on the helicam, so we actually get to see that same battle going on again. So anyone at home that's slightly confused as the cars look a little bit different, it is simply a case of when you put the replay on, for some reason it doesn't show. But yeah, to be fair, Casangina getting bumped off there, but the BMW was on its line. It wasn't in the wrong place. Oh, and Casangina into the pits, obviously deciding that that is it. Let's get out this traffic and try and get some damage fixed. Florence with the fastest lap of the race now, though, running in second place. And I imagine seeing that purple time coming up on the timing screen is maybe making Fender just wince a little bit. He hasn't got away quite maybe as much as he was hoping to.
Also, Kevin Niles just snatched a position away from Corner Crack, going up into P8. So the Aston Martins performing pretty well in these conditions. Of course, Podens and Neuwirth were involved in that big instance at the first corner. So unfortunately, they've kind of been removed from the equation somewhat. But Kevin Niles, I think that is now 9 positions that he has gained since the start of this race. So Triple 4 car now sitting pretty in P8, looking to charge off in hunt of Janos Reinders in that 500 Honda.
this little pack going on here, and I believe it is led by, is it Brewer? Is it Brewer? Yes, Brewer leading this little pack, car number 91. This group behind him are hungry for positions, and understandably, Avilés is very keen to catch back up, and he has done a pretty good job actually already. Already onto the back of Seminara again. So this is what we were saying about in qualifying. Maybe some of these big front engine cars aren't necessarily the fastest, but in the actual race, this is when they're really starting to show their own. No sign of the rain letting off in the slightest, as John says.
Sorry to cut you off there. York and Van Meerveld side by side. They've been squabbling. Oh, that was a tank slapper for Van Meerveld. Matt, you're going slightly deep in towards the final chicane. I think it's got moved done. There's a yellow flag out for somebody. Who was that? I think Dennis Shops brought out a yellow flag. He wasn't too much further up the order as Van Meerveld and a few other drivers going into the pits there. Now, I'm trying to find Dennis Shops on
He's gone into the
my
pits.
screen. He is in the pits.
He was 16th place. I think he went into the pits. I wonder if that's maybe what brought the yellow flag on, is a bit of a desperate braking, trying to get into the pits. He was showing up. Yeah, he is still there in the green Honda. He's in the pits as we speak.
A lot of early pit stops in this race.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the wet weather, you can nurse those tyres on for quite a long time. It is possible to do. But when you're absolutely pushing it to the limit, it is going to be quite a tyre advantage for some of these people that pit later. If people have managed to stay out of trouble and have just managed to keep like, sort of their nose clean, and they're running at full spec still at the moment, no damage as they were intending, it's a massive advantage for these guys. See, Fender now also taken back fastest lap of the race, so trying to put in a bit of a gap. What are we looking at now? 2.5 seconds between him and Florence. So that doesn't seem quite right. Oh, that's not Florence behind him. That's why that's a back marker between them. So he's got a back marker as well, cushioning himself from that number 42 Honda.
Oh, Neuwirth and Stachecki further down the order for the battle for P26, side by side through turns 1 and 2. And I think Neuwirth has come out on top in all that, so he's putting those fresh tyres to good use on the Aston Martin there. But yeah, that got a little bit door-banggy for between those two, but did just about manage to get through the thing fairly safely and cleanly. Certainly more clean than what we saw on the opening lap of this race anyway.
Yes, definitely cleaner than that. Yeah, but there's definitely some paint being shared there, I think. There's going to be some orange among the green and some green among the orange on those two. Just the way that everyone's pitted is really quite sort of confusing. So our leading pitted driver is Richie, and then Giacomelli in second place of the pitted drivers. Reinders into the pits as well. So there really is a lot of really high up the grid cars deciding to go into the pits. And it's kind of really throwing the battles all over the place. If I'm honest, it's getting quite difficult to work out who's a back marker and who isn't. Although, someone who is definitely on the attack is Fazekas still. Right on the back of Corner Crack now. Really starting to put the pressure on. This could be a move within the lap, I think. And there's a flash of the lights there as well, I think. Oof. Now, that was a bit of a brave line in the wet. I know you can take a massive cut out of Worth. It is quite a corner you can take a big chunk of the tarmac away from, but in the wet, really risky going over that green stuff. Oh, and a move down here into the chicane. Can he get it done? He's up the inside. Oh, there was contact, just out-braked himself. And he's got his toe down, and he's going to keep going on. I imagine there's probably going to be a bit of a dispute there. Yeah, and a big flash of the lights from Corner Crack. He's saying, hang on a second, that was definitely a push to pass. Now, I'm just going to
have a bit look back on the replay then, just see if I can get a slightly better angle to see how that one played out, because I imagine that Fazekas will say that Corner Crack turned in, Corner Crack will say that Fazekas missed his braking point, and as they got to the apex, yeah, I think arguably there, Fazekas, as much as he's had a great charge through the field, he just carried a little bit too much momentum there in towards turn 10 and door-to-door contact, so hopefully no too major damage exchanged between those two drivers, but I think perhaps understandable disagreement there from Corner Crack's perspective and all that.
Yeah, I think the flashing of the lights that we're seeing, I think, is more than justified. Someone who's on a bit of a charge now is Alexa Gates coming up onto the back of Matt York. As they came through that final sector, it was down to 0.2. It has stretched out a little bit. Surprisingly, that Mercedes looking quite skittish in the wet, I would say. Doesn't look as planted as I expected it to be. I mean, obviously it all comes down to setup and how you've got the car sort of poised for how you like driving, but it did look a little bit loose through turns 1 and 2. And Matt
I think
York,
it's that tendency of the platform for the Mercedes. You do quite often end up running quite an aggressive amount of rake, I think, in that car to try to get the nose tucked in. Not as bad as it used to be. It produced a lot more downforce at the front end than it used to a few BOPs ago, but it can make it inherently twitchy, and sometimes the way that power is delivered isn't in the smoothest of fashion. It does have quite the chunk of torque from the V8 in the front of that car, so that's perhaps why it's not enjoying these conditions too much. I was also just keeping an eye on some of the lap times. So Richie, 52.4 on the last lap. That's his fastest lap of the race. Comparison, we've got Giacomelli, who's then the next pitter, 52.2 for the Italian. But looking up at the front of the field, though, Angus Fender, 51.6, new fastest lap of the race. Florence, 52 dead. Brewer, 52.3. Waring, 51.9. So, to be honest, these fresh tyres on some of these cars further down the order, not a tremendous amount of advantage relative to those drivers that haven't made any sort of pit stop yet. But of course, when we get to the second half of the race, the tyre wear difference is going to be somewhere in the order of 20 to 25 minutes, which is huge when that degradation really picks up at the tail end of this race. So I'm not entirely sure whether or not these early pit stop strategies are really going to translate to a great advantage by the time we get to the nearer end portion of this race.
No, I said as we saw like the lap 1 and 2, we obviously saw people pitting for damage, totally understandable, and you might as well get your sort of mandatory stop out the way while you've got pit for damage. But yeah, I mean, half the grid has already pitted, and I don't think half the grid have had incidents. I mean, maybe they haven't. We just lost count of them at this point. But yeah, really surprised as to how many have pitted, and yeah, just over a quarter of the race complete at this point. And it's a long way to go on those tyres, and in the wet, where you really cannot have sort of balding tyres. You need as much tread on those tyres as possible.
I think we might have a possible move here. Sorry to cut you off. Neuwirth versus Taryn on the run towards turn 1. Aston Martin straight line speed is mighty, and I think Neuwirth is practically going to have that one done before they even get to the braking zone. He needs to get it stopped, though. Carries a huge amount of speed in towards the apex there, a bit more than I think he would have liked. Taryn immediately on his gearbox as they head in towards turn 3 there, but I think in the end, the number 63 Aston Martin, who we know has got pace in that car, does it get the position done and up into 23rd place.
Range saying Neuwirth in 23rd place, isn't it? That is an improvement for him, obviously, after the incident earlier in this race. But yeah, that was a lovely move down into turn 1. Again, you just see the deficit in speed that poor Porsche still carries. I really thought by this point that it would have been levelled off a little bit in the balance of performance, but it just never is it? It always struggles in a straight line.
Oh, sorry,
Matt
big
York.
mistake from Matt York.
We just jumped on board with them, and Alexa Gates actually going to get the position, I think. It's a drag race down to turn 1. Who's going to be braver on the brakes? Matt York, loads of experience here in Tier 2, but his first season in the car. I know he gives up the position there, but is he going to be able to take it back into turn 3? He's all over the gearbox. A nudge. Oh dear. And there was a nudge on Alexa Gates. Really well recovered by her, to be fair. Great bit of driving by her. And now Brun goes up the inside as well, gains a position. He just had to stay on the back of those guys and girls. Apologies. And then gains the position. Brilliant bit of driving there from Brun, to be fair. Nice bit of tactical driving of just staying on the tail and waiting for the accident to happen in front of him. And I imagine there will be white knuckles in that Mercedes. And
Marlon in the background. Sorry, it just went straight into the gravel. I just heard it in the background there. I was on board looking at Matt York. I'm trying to see how the mistake came about, because he was right on the back of the recovering Mercedes of Alexa Gates. And then as they got towards turn 5, trying to see what happened to the Audi driver, but did seem to end up in the gravel, I think, all by himself. Yet just completely misses his braking point into the gravel. Thankfully, no harm done. Sort of majorly to either cars. No further damage ensued and all of that. But, yeah, not what the Brazilian driver would have wanted from that.
No, not at all. Obviously, we saw him qualifying quite low down. He was worried about his connection. And he sort of started from the back. And, yeah, and sadly, that's seen him tumble down a few more positions. Well, actually, no, he'd lost one position, I presume. But yeah, not what you would have wanted. That's now the tyres full of gravel. It's going to take a little while to get those tyres feeling proper again. And it just takes a little while to get your confidence back after a mistake like that. Someone who does not need any confidence coming back to them is Angus Fender, absolutely flying away in the Ferrari now, with a very dominant lead of 3.8 seconds. Just coming up to the 40-minute mark left of this race. Again, you really see how brave he is through there. Absolutely taking thunderous amount off the inside. Oh, and I think there might be a battle going on. Robin Moe coming up. Yes, Robin Moe versus Rimbaud. I think that was a pass for position through turn 4 there. And he gets it done.
It was a mistake from the Audi, and yeah, Moe wasted no time in that Ferrari to get through. We know that car's got good pace today, and yeah, going back to Angus Fender, absolutely right. When the Ferrari is in the right window, it is an absolute weapon of a car. So much downforce can be generated from that platform, and it does sometimes struggle in terms of straight line speed, but when you've got wet weather conditions and you've got a technical circuit like Catalonia, that's not really too much of an issue. And another aspect that is very good at is managing and handling its tyres. And Fender is putting all of that into good effect. In real life, he's had more experience in BMWs in terms of GT3 sort of style of cars, but quite clearly feeling very comfortable in the Italian outfit.
Keeping an eye still on Robin Moe, who now he's made the pass, has really started to fly away, really on the charge now, 0.3 up on his best lap time. So really starting to push forward now. And I wonder if he's going to be able to catch up with the back of Zikos. He's still 2.5 seconds behind, but with the kind of pace he's putting in, 152.5 on that last lap compared to 152.8 of Zikos, with 38 minutes and 30 seconds left of the race. Still definitely time to make some moves. So all sort of quiet at the front of the grid at the moment. Everyone reasonably well spread out. Brun still on the charge, chasing after the back of Rattiani now after making his way past Gates and York.
Yeah, it was almost a second faster than the Porsche on the last lap. So number 29 Porsche maybe suffering a little bit in these later stages. I think that car may have been in the wars somewhat as well for Rattiani, and who is no stranger to going very long in the opening stint of a wet weather race. We saw him pitting extremely late at Kota in the second round, which arguably did actually lose Richie that race, because Richie did lose, as that's a mistake there from Rattiani, losing time on the exit of that very tricky 7-8 chicane then up the hill, but also a mistake for Brun in that 9-10 Ferrari, so it will be safe for now. But it'll be interesting to see how far Rattiani goes into this race. Also just having a little bit of a look at the lap times in this one. So 51.9 for Fender on the last lap. The only driver in the 51s other than not too long ago was Jay Fang. And Jay Fang did a 52.1 on the last lap, but that BMW, which is now very much out of position after the early incidents in this race, is at least on some decent pace and lapping very quickly relative to a lot of cars ahead of it. So we could still see Jay Fang making his way back up through the field and trying to score some vital points for his championship campaign, as Florence, one of the main protagonists for the potential race win, has come into the pit for the 42 Honda.
And that's one of the first people from within inside that top 5 drivers deciding to come into the pits. That is a big move. It's going to be interesting to see where they come out, whether they're going to be in too much traffic or not.
But Raven, sorry, just brought out a yellow flag not too long ago. I'm going to try to see what happened on the replay, but I have a feeling, unfortunately for the BMW, may have just made a mistake all by himself on the exit of turn 9, I do believe.
Yeah, just jump back on the replay as well. So currently, just coming up through Capsa. Oh, yeah, just a bit of snap oversteer. To be fair, very well saved. That could have been a lot worse. That could have been a full rotation, but just enough to bring out a yellow flag there. Does he get his stop down by the hairpin? Yes, he does. A little bit deep, but a decent recovery there from what could have been a very nasty incident.
Also, a battle that's reigniting is Alexa Gates versus Matt York for P15 wide for Matt York on the exit turn 9. That might be the opportunity that 35 Mercedes needs, and I think there may have even been a little bit of a lift there from York in the Audi, because obviously these two did come together earlier on the exit of turn 2, and I think not just the pace advantage being in favour of that number 35 car, but Matt York, I think, maybe, of course, has a lot of experience, as we said, in Tier 2. Very respectful driver as that as well. And I think may have actually deliberately backed off a little bit there.
Oh, but gosh, nearly went into the
position. Although that would have gone, I think, would have gone downhill pretty quickly if there was contact there. But thankfully, managed to keep it out of the gearbox. On the Mercedes of Gates, who then goes wide on the exit on the final corner. I think should just about have enough car lengths over the Audi to maintain the position for now.
Yeah, I think just for now. And actually, I think in front, that battle as well, Brun versus Rattiani is still waging on. It's a little bit closer than the York versus Alexa battle. It's still so close. And to be fair, Brun is just slowly reeling in the back of Rattiani. We obviously saw a mistake from both of them last time round. So really, it's just a case of if Brun can just keep it clean and not make a mistake, he could get the pass here.
Just also having another look at... Oh, that was a bit of a wiggle from Rattiani going deep into that turn there. That could give the advantage to Brun in the Ferrari. I was just about to praise Rattiani, who is our biggest mover on the grid currently. Of course, we'll have to see how everything plays out. Again, it's a mistake from that Porsche. He's gained 25 positions in this race, but it might be about to be 24.
I was about to say, surely you can't go up the inside there. Decides not to, backs out ever so slightly from Brun, but now all over the back of that Porsche, and this is where we know the Porsche's slow.
Oh, Hans Peter's around at the hairpin, just up ahead of these drivers. Hans Peter's gone around. I'll try to catch what happened on the replay there, but the Audi, who had gained, I think, about 22 positions in this grid, has made a mistake.
Josh Waring into the pits as well. Brun still stuck behind Rattiani. But yeah, this is the thing, we're seeing these really high-end drivers just making the odd little mistake in the wet, and there is no coming back from us. Oh, massive curb strike from Rattiani. That was, well, trying to take a bit of a quicker line through there, and I'm not sure that really worked. You can see the car, I think it was all four wheels off the floor at one point there. And Brun just hanging on to the back. We're going to jump back on with... Oh, no, we're not. We'll stick with these two as they come down into turn 1. This might be the Ferrari's chance. He has a little look to the inside. Can he do anything under braking? I don't think so.
Porsche's very good under brakes, obviously, but that Ferrari is good in the high-speed stuff, and you see that number 29 car sliding left and right when they go through these quicker corners. So I think Brun will be on the attack again in just a moment. Hans Peter still just up ahead of them, completely lost it on his own, unfortunately. As always, a stop-and-go 30-second penalty for Waring. Disaster
Speeding
for
in the pit
number
lane.
34 Honda. So yeah, that is a speeding penalty from the pit lane there. And the number 34 car, who is currently third in the championship, that is disaster for the man from Wales, as Nicholas Hurst just emerged from the pit lane as well. Neuwirth has just slotted past him and into towards 21st position, but that is a very impactful penalty, and that was a huge tax lap as well, actually, for number 14 car on the exit of turn 2. But for Waring, that is a big issue for him, and I imagine also a sigh of relief for the likes of Jay Fang, who's still many further positions down, but that'll just be one extra position that he won't end up losing, I imagine, once Waring serves that penalty, as Fender and Seminara, the championship leader, also come into the pits.
Definitely. Oh, yeah, that's a massive slide. We're just on the replay there for Carnival 14. Really well caught there in the Porsche. When that car starts to go, it's a real menace to try and get back on the reins. So fair play for holding that one together. From that was from Nicholas Hurt, actually, that one, isn't it? Yeah,
we know that Hurt has got a lot of pace in that car. We saw him get a podium in the opening round. He almost won at Silverstone, but he just hasn't seemingly quite settled into that same groove. 10th and a 14th in rounds 2 and 3. DNF at Bathurst, now outside the top 20, although that may improve, of course, when the remainder of our pit stops happen. But, yeah, quick hands in that cockpit, talent and speed, clearly. But
Fender gets a stop, go 30. So our leading driver gets a stop, go 30. I think someone has knocked the pit entry sign. They're basically the same as in real life. There is a sign there to let you know this is the point you need to be going at the pit speed limit. And I think it must be missing, or people are just missing the white line where it's so wet. That's a massive shake-up for the top position, and almost definitely going to lose out on some positions, because not only is he pitted once, he's got to go in again and stop for 30 seconds. It is the worst penalty you can get in this game, and Alex Fender will be absolutely kicking himself after that.
Corner Crack has just absolutely barreled in towards turn 1 there. He has slammed those barriers, and I think has just disappeared off into Narnia.
He was just out of the pits. So he left the pit. I wonder, did he get a stop go 30 and just
I don't think he did. There was nothing that appeared on my screen anyway, and it pops up immediately on pit exits as Waring has just come in to serve his penalty. So I have no idea whatsoever what happened there for Corner Crack.
He didn't even brake. He didn't even brake. I wonder if there may have been a hardware error for him there, because he came out the pits, accelerated away, and then he just went straight on. I didn't see any brake lights come on whatsoever. So, yeah, not sure what happened there. But it's all gone a bit Pete Tong for the top drivers.
Yeah, I was also just checking back on the replay. I saw a white flag out for Seminara, who is in a very good position right now with the likes of Jay Fang being very far down the order, and Josh Waring, of course, getting that stop go 30. Really helps his championship fight. I'll tell you what though, Seminara, I have this really, I hope I'm not correct in saying this, I'm just looking at how much time he's losing to Rangers closing in. I have this horrible feeling the 112 car may have gone onto slicks and there's contact! The 112 car around on the exit, and I think that Seminara, because he went off on the exit of turn 1 when he emerged from the pits and was having a terrible time, straight into pits he goes, and I think I'm right in saying that he's gone onto slick tyres. So after being gifted a potentially very strong result to cement that championship lead, he now makes a mistake on strategy. We've had stop-go 30-second penalties, and at this rate, if the way things carry on, Jay Fang, who was in the gravel trap on the exit of turn 2 on the very first lap, out of our championship protagonist, is actually going to be the one that's going to score the most amount of points. Unbelievable stuff.
I mean, we see it nearly every time there is a wet race, that everything just, all our plans.
Oh, sorry, in contact to turn 2 as well between Robin Moe and Dennis Shops, and Stachecki trying to take the pair of them on the exit. And after having a little bit of quiet sort of time in this race, it's all kicked off right in the midway point.
Wow, that was Robin Moe, fresh from the pits as well. Thundering down towards turn 1, just watching it back on the replay now. And we see the Honda trying to go around the outside. Oh, and outbreak.
Moe's retired to the pits. Robin Moe has retired to the pits. I didn't quite catch immediately what happened there. And in actual fact, unfortunately, I can't see on my replay. I'll try and catch it off the back of someone else's car because I think he's left the session. I'm just looking at Stachecki's on board right now, looking towards what happened to Robin Moe and the Ferrari. Oh dear! I think there could have been a technical fault there, because on the exit of turn 4, just speared off completely to the left-hand side of the circuit into the gravel trap, and then went straight to the pits and retired from this race shortly afterwards. So I don't know. I think there could have been a technical issue there in all of that, but yeah, big disappointment there for Robin Moe that was in the middle of that scrap. But that is now a couple of drivers who immediately after pitting, their race has just completely turned on its head entirely.
Yeah, very sort of, so I think it was a bit of a strange coincidence, but yeah, because the contact between them did not look really significant. I even thought there's no way that Mo would have just sort of raged out and decided to, you know, just call it a day, because it wasn't like he picked up a lot of damage. But yeah, probably really disappointed with that, and to be sort of disconnected or have that kind of issue, it's always an absolute kick in the teeth for these racers. I mean, they put in so much effort, so much practice, so much time, to then have it taken away sometimes can be an absolute kicker. Someone who's having a bit of a scrap now is Raven versus Peter, down through turn 2. And actually coming into turn 3, there might be a little move up the inside. Raven looking to the inside, but not able to make a move on Peter. But the Audi looking unsettled, and we might see something over to turn 4 here. There we go, Peter going defensive. Raven looks to the outside. Really well placed, that car by Peter. Brilliant bit of driving there. Got the car stopped on the apex. Just held the line. Didn't leave enough room for the inside so that Raven could not get the switch back. But it does look like Peter is starting to struggle against Raven at this point.
Yeah,
BMW
is just a bit more composed, isn't it, in these wet conditions? It's just, it gives that confidence boost to the driver to be able to push on under these very tricky wet weather circumstances, and also keeping a close eye on the scrap between Fazekas and Nicholas Hurt a bit further up, as well as Rangers and Niles. So I think each all with different combination of manufacturers in this battle, so we're getting a very close look at the differences between each of these cars, as Fender now does come into the pits to serve his stop-go 30-second penalty. So I have to see where the man that was dominating this race up until that halfway point, where he will emerge after that penalty, and I think it could very well be well outside of the top 20.
Oh, and after all the battling that was going on between Bart Raven and Hans Peter, Raven makes a mistake coming through Europcar, and now that is it. He's dropped right off the back of the Audi, and I imagine that'll be a huge breath of relief from Hans Peter, because I think through Sector 1, the BMW just looked a lot more comfortable and a much more aggressive car through turns 1, 2 and 3. So at the moment our current leader is Rimbaud, who we saw having some issues a little bit earlier on in the race and having a little bit of a squabble, but good to see him up at the front. Oh, the commentator's curse, he nearly went off, so we will move away. We don't want to ruin his race quite yet. And
close between Gates and Rattiani on the exit of turn 2. Then Mercedes, I think, just emerged from the pits, so it's going to take a little bit of time to fire up those tyres, and the number 29 Porsche, number 15 Ferrari immediately putting pressure onto the Mercedes in towards turn 4 then. But I think if she can get the power down tidily through there and on the run towards turn 5, at least for the time being, should be okay to hold on to that P20 spot from those two cars. Although good acceleration from Rattiani on the exit, actually. Let's try to show the nose up towards that 7-8 chicane, and in actual fact, nose goes from being the hunter to potentially the hunted, with Mellis applying all sorts of pressure, who then goes a little bit deep through into the gravel. As Hans Peter ahead is around. So Hans Peter, who made up many positions in this race, has gone around seemingly on the exit of turn 9. He was driving pretty much by himself.
Mellis gets the move done. Sorry, I have to quickly say that Mellis gets the move done on Rattiani. I was looking over the rear wing of Alexa Gates, looking back, and they're down at the hairpin. Oh, and what is going on here? Suddenly, Rattiani is hemorrhaging positions, just disappearing back now. Lost another position.
Yeah, that is not what the number 29 car would have wanted. We'll try to see if we can catch it on the replay. In actual fact, the recovering Angus Fender, I think, may be about to gain a position over Matt York, applying the pressure up the inside of the final turn. It's tricky to go through there. Did have a look back at Hans Peter, completely lost it by himself on the exit of Kamsa then, and speared himself into the inside wall. So not what the German driver would have wanted after such a charge through the field. Fender's still stuck behind the Audi of Matt York, and Hans Peter understandably has come into the pits because lights flickering on the front of that car, and anyone that has driven on ACC knows that that is pretty much the sort of highest level of damage you can get, and the point at which your car is more or less equivalent to something out of a scrapyard. So understandably into the pits then, but big disappointment for the number 5 car that had gained so many positions today.
Yeah, he'll be very disappointed with that. I say, especially, I mean, obviously you don't want to crash in any way, shape or form, but sometimes when you get taken out, at least you can blame someone else for it. Ooh, Fender still right on the back of York. Some good car placement by York, but he's definitely on the defensive here. He's not going to want to give up the position. But knowing York, he will not risk an incident. If he knows he is going to get taken out by a faster driver, he will make a smart decision. Oh, but actually...
also, Arnaud Brun just lifted off and gifted the position to Rattiani. So the confusion continues around that number 29 car as, yeah, the 910 Ferrari just completely backed off, gave up the position there.
Sorry, Fender in the background there, nearly taking out Matt York again. I mean, clearly feeling more comfortable in that Ferrari than Matt York is in the Audi. Oh, and a bit of a mistake there from the Audi. A little bit of oversteer on the exit of the turn, and he's left the inside open. He's going to have the inside down towards the chicane. No, he's not. He realises it's not worth the scrap. Lets him on through. Lets Fender through at the last moment. Don't think there was any way he could safely... Oh, God, Matt York really struggling now with the Audi. I wonder if maybe he turned down his traction control just a little bit, trying to get some more pace. And just starting to look a little bit unsettled at this point in the race. And he'll be disappointed to lose the position.
Yeah, it is tricky under these conditions. Also got some other scraps going on between Stachecki and Chops before P14. And the Mercedes driver has been going very quickly, as well as also Neuwirth versus Reinders. And bearing in mind, Neuwirth was in that absolute calamity of an incident in the opening lap. And I do believe that once Rimbaud and Andrade pit at the very front of the field, this will be P8 for that Aston Martin, and maybe even P7, P6 just up ahead. So this has been a phenomenal recovery drive for Voltec in that number 63 car. And bear in mind, he's P9 in the championship, but with all the shenanigans that we have had going on today, as Marlon is actually has just come into the pit centre, Rimbaud will be the last driver to make a pit stop. But we've got Fender that's just made his way past Arnaud Brun on the run up towards the chicane, so that's another position gain for the recovering number 9 car. But when we consider Seminara having a terrible day, Jay Fang, despite his best effort, still down in P18, Josh Waring 26th, Casangina, I think, has retired from this race completely. Avalé, last week's race winner in P6, great stuff from him. That'll be P5 once our current race leader goes into pit, so that really helps his championship fight. Fazekas, great consistency from him. There are drivers, and then of course Richie right now, who's effectively in P2. So there's some serious drivers that are going to gain from all of the carnage and chaos that we have had at Barcelona today.
I'm going to say, Barcelona shouldn't be the circuit where you have all the incidents, but I have never commentated on a race at Barcelona that hasn't had some kind of huge incident through turns 1, 2 and 3. I'm just thinking back on all the different races I've commentated on and sort of, and spectated, and I think nearly every single one has had some sort of incident. Still on board with Stachecki at the moment, and he... Oh! What happened there? Big mistake from him. Locked up the brakes and took out the inside of... I mean, I'm surprised he's not...
I think he actually caught the entry curb. I think he caught the entry curb on the right-hand side, and the rear just completely gave way underneath the Mercedes. And yeah, that's very unfortunate contact. Also, just on the last lap, both Melis and Fender in the two Ferraris gaining positions over Gates and Rattiani respectively, and making their way further in towards that top 20.
Brilliant effort from them. Yeah, that entry curb on the outside, it just unsettled the car. And then it was like they just had no brakes whatsoever, wasn't it? It went straight through. I don't think either car took too much damage, hopefully. Shops will probably be very annoyed if he has now picked up a decent chunk of damage. But he has held on to the position. But the recovering Stachecki, I thought, was going to try and take the position away immediately. As both of those cars obviously spun and in the gravel to the inside and outside of the circuit, respectively. But no, Shops has managed to hang on to it, and I imagine he's going to try and now maybe really try and stretch his legs and get away. If ever there was a moment to really think, oh God, I need to try and make a gap, now is the time. Florent is going to inherit the lead, almost certainly. There's no way that Rimbaud can pit and obviously maintain this position. I'm just looking now, Giacomelli 4th, Brewer in 5th. Those two squabbling reasonably. I think there might come a time where that gets a bit closer.
Also, Giacomelli, bear in mind, was one of our drivers that pitted extremely early, same as Richie. We were doubting that undercut, but the fact right now is they've kept themselves out of trouble and they've just been running effectively more or less their own race. I don't think, other than a few overtakes here and there, they've actually had too much in the way of busyness after the very first lap. And it's worked for them, because with everything else that's been kicking off, to find themselves in P2 and P3 respectively is very, very competitive and strong. And right now, their lap times are still very decent and respectable compared to those around them. So the tyre degradation around here, as Rimpels is, I think, arguably proving, considering he is up at the front, although last lap 54.0 is not the most competitive time that we've seen in this field, so maybe stretching out that stint a bit too far in that Audi. He does have to make a pit stop eventually, but be interested to see where he emerges. But definitely that undercuts and just keeping out of trouble in the end does seem to have been the stronger sort of route to go down and keeping yourself out of a lot of this midfield carnage. There's a scrap kicking off once again between Matt York and Arnaud Brun. That almost came to blows on the entry towards turn 10 there. The Audi, though, just about managing to pick it up on the brakes and avoid any further contact. And then also Neuwirth versus Rangers still kicking off what will be effectively the battle for P7 once Rimbaud pits is once again making its way into fruition. But I have to say, looking at the positions gained in this field, I mean, the likes of Giacomelli, Niles, Reinders, Fazekas, Hurt, Zikos as well, you know, so many positions gained. Some of these drivers that have just kept themselves out of trouble. And, you know, and I think also a lot of respect has to be given to the likes of Neuwirth, who was in a world of pain at the end of lap 1 and has recovered through this field beautifully. And considering all of the issues that some of the other drivers around him in the championship have been having, I think he'll be very pleased that he's stuck in this race and is looking to see it through to the end.
Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, obviously, with that kind of incident really early on in the race, it can be so tempting just to call it a day on the dashboard now of that car number 63. Just there's no visibility at all. The spray coming off the back of the Honda is intense, and just the rain falling is filling the windscreen as well. I mean, you can barely see out the front. Oh, a little bit of a mistake there, but managed to hold it together. But yeah, I mean, just the fact of hanging on and sticking it out and not just retiring. It can be so easy when you have an incident early in the race to just sort of want to throw your gloves off and say, no, I'm done. I'm just going to call it a day and retire to the pits. But fair play. And this recovery drive has been absolutely fantastic. Inside the top 10 already. And so these two drivers, Rangers and Neuwirth, still putting in some really respectable times. Mid-52s at the moment, the pair of them on low to mid-52s. And there's people in front of them. I mean, you've got Avalays and... Well, Avalays, yeah, actually, last lap round, Avalays was a 1:52.9, so significantly slower than some others around him. So there is the opportunity to just keep pushing forward. Niles, actually, just realised, kind of a 4.44. Great effort from him. Not sure where he qualified, but currently up in 7th place. And that's a
Started in P17.
So 10 positions gained in this race is a really good effort, to be fair.
Yeah, he's not had the easiest season. I think the Aston Martin is a little bit of a new adaptation for that. For the British driver, who's been a long-term driver in the AOR Championships across many a season now. Oh, drive through a Neuwirth! Oh, disaster for the number 63 car. And after we were just praising his recovery drive, the commentator's curse strikes again. And I think what's even worse and more frustrating for him in all of this, by the looks of it, he dropped quite far back from Reinders. And I imagine that he's made a mistake, has gone wide, has probably actually lost time effectively, but in the wet in particular, he has a big slide running through turn 12, driving an anger now, I think, inside that Aston Martin. And yeah, sometimes, particularly in the wet weather, even when you lose time from either extending the track limits or cutting an apex a bit too severely.
Gonna have to quickly cut you off, John, I'm afraid. Coming down into turn 1, we've got a big move here from Giacomelli, already going around the outside. Can he get it done? No, he can't. Oh, Richie hangs onto the position but that speed deficit was absolutely ridiculous there on the Porsche, on the rear wing of the Porsche. We were looking over that camera, and you could just see, like a sprinting cheetah, Giacomelli was reeling in the back of Ricci, and this is really starting to show now that maybe Ricci's starting to lose a little bit of pace, because Brewer as well is all over the back of Giacomelli now, really pushing up on the back of him. Giacomelli really struggling to work out whether to go on the attack or go on the defence at this moment. These three, so this is technically the battle for second place once Rimbaud has pitted. These three all absolutely nose to tail, and a battle that was maybe half a second between them a lap ago is suddenly absolutely nose to tail. The slightest mistake is going to cause an issue here. Sorry for cutting you off there, John, but it was all starting to kick right off.
No, I was seeing this battle brewing a couple of laps to go, and it gives us a very exciting scrap, and also a very important one as well, because bearing in mind Ricci, he needs to capitalise on the chaos from today, because right now he is the best poised driver, I think, with inside the top 10 of drivers in the championship standings, and he's right now on target to finish P2. What he can't afford to do is to have contact and lose this bucket load of points, that even if he drops to P3, maybe even P4, he will still gain significantly over the likes of Seminara, Fang, Waring, Casangina, Avile. There will be a small margin relative to him, but you know, there are several drivers that he is looking to gain over as those gaps open up just a little bit more this time around. But the Aston Martin will be wasting no time in closing that up in just a moment. Neuwirth, after his drive-through penalty, emerged down in P17 and has just under 10 minutes off this race. Let's go look at that number 6 car of Giacomelli, immediately locked onto the rear wing of Ricci by the time they got to that turn 1 apex, and Aston Martin.
Oh, bit of a slide there, I think, from Ricci. A little bit of a mistake through turn 3. I think he just held on to it, but the car definitely looked unsettled. Sorry for cutting you off.
Not at all.
I've got to say, and the livery's working on car number 6, so that is a huge bonus. That was a very late entry to the livery pack, that one. But we've got it working thanks to the work of John in the background sorting that out, because it was quite the mess of files that got sent through last minute. But yeah, good to see that livery's actually working on my screen, which is also
great. The fact it's getting so much coverage with this race as well. But yeah, that's it's white flag for Mellis down in P18. I think may have had just a little small issue perhaps through turn 1, and no, in fact I think that was just game being a little bit overly sensitive in all of that. Oh, as Dennis Shops and Stachecki have just swapped positions on the exit of turn 4. So these two came together earlier on. Switchback now potentially on for the number 11 car side by side. They made it through the corner that saw them drop down the order before, but it's now a drag race between the Honda and the Mercedes, and back down the inside is Dennis Shops. So the scrap for P13 continues to brew, and Stachecki fighting back on the exit. It's amazing stuff up and towards Cancer Curve now, and Mercedes goes wide, and a switchback maybe on again for the Honda, but the Mercedes has the power down, will hold the inside line. It's going to have to be very brave on the brakes from Shops if he wants to recover this one, and I think as long as that 144 car keeps it neat and tidy, although this final sector is tricky in that front engine Mercedes, I think Stachecki will have finally got that move done. But what a little tussle that those two had, and also one that's actually brewing just behind them is the likes of Fang versus Raven. Of course, Fang second in the championship, well out of position, and so is Raven with that tank slapper. And there's contact between Stachecki and Shops as well at the chicane. It's all kicking off his positions. Those two came together earlier on. Stachecki sent around, and Fang has dropped away a little bit now from Bar Raven. So even in the final 7.5 minutes of this race, chaos still ensuing here at Catalunya.
Oh, and I think Stachecki has only just rounded the final corner now as well, so lost a huge amount of time and places. Oh, still kicking off here though with Bart Raven. Still really having a look there on the back of Jay Fang. Sorry, yeah, Jay Fang looking at the back of Bart Raven. This could be a change. We've seen a couple of mistakes this evening from Bart Raven. Just looking like that car's a little bit unsettled, and actually, yes, looking like a little bit of a run possibly coming on now. Up towards turn 4, goes defensive. Are we going to see a switchback here? Not quite, but it is leaving the gap open. It's going to have the outside here. It's going to be difficult to do anything. Oh no, I've taken full advantage. Look how quickly he's come into play. Suddenly sniffing around the back of these two BMWs. And he's like, you keep squabbling, lads. I will just sit here and take away both those places if you're not careful. And Noah, oh, there we go on the inside. Car number 24 goes through. Just gets the job done.
Fighting back though, Raven on the exit.
Surely not going to try and go around the outside there. Maybe a switchback. And again, is he nowhere on the attack? Oh, there might have been contact there. And who is this as well? Someone else has joined the
Melis is into play now.
Melis is into it all as well. I'm going to go helicam just so we can see all the action going on at once. A little bit difficult sometimes with the more of the static cameras. But yeah, Noah really close to the back of Bart Raven now. Is he trying to force a mistake? But he's got to be so careful not to cause an incident and end up getting a post-race penalty. I think he's desperate to get past Raven so he can try and hang on to the back of Jay Fang. Oh, looks to the outside, not able to do it. Lots of curb running there. Yeah, and I think actually Melis is now going to be on the attack.
Oh, Rimbound also finally comes into the pits. I was wondering if he was going to make that stop eventually, but as Melis now reeling in that Aston Martin double toe effect for the Ferrari at the tail end of this battle. What does Melis look to do? And they all stay in line for the time being. But I think Bart Raven is potentially going to have quite the hassle from these two over the next couple of laps as they now scrap for what is P14 as Rimbound. Yeah, that strategy hasn't quite worked out, I think, in the way that he was aiming for. Down in towards P20, he was losing about a second and a half over the last few laps. He will have mighty tyres at this point in the race now, but I'm still not sure that that was ultimately the best strategy.
I think he might have left there a bit too late, really, because by the time he sort of got the tyres properly switched on in the wet, it's at least 2 laps. I mean, that's nearly most of the time gone. Oh, there we go. Noah flicks to the inside. I thought it was nearly going to be contact, but I think it was just a very quick jink at the steering wheel to get up the inside. Gets the move done. Can he hold on to it? And can Melis now take advantage as well as they come up towards Camper? Yeah, goes a little bit defensive there, Noah. Make sure he hangs onto the position, and now it's going to be a drag race down to the chicane. Melis getting a little bit out of shape there as well.
Fender's in this now as well. It just moves from one quadruplet to another. I thought there was going to be contact, and Fender sent out the inside of Melis there. The two Ferraris now, from being the predators in all of this to try to make up positions, now are the prey as Melis has dropped down the order, flashing the lights. Not too happy about Fender sending that one, but of course Fender was the race leader for a long time, but he's made a mistake through turn 13 there, and Melis diving on the inside. Oh, that was inevitable. Yeah. Very late switch back there. Fender clatters the because of and a drive-through penalty for Fender. Oh, that is a disaster, and he is going to be absolutely fuming.
I think he's done, isn't he? Well, I'm not sure. I thought he was pulling off the line then to almost let off the throttle and give up. I
think he's just going to be trying to make.
Oh, and there was more contact there. Rear end contact there from Melis. I mean that. Well, they're still scrapping. This is where you don't want to get dirty. I mean, I'm not really sure what was going on there with Melis with that rear-end contact on the pit straight. No need to there. You can get about 5 cars wide. Obviously trying to use the toe as much as possible.
Maybe a little bit of rubber banding involved potentially, but I have a feeling Fender doesn't really, unfortunately, he might just about, if he's lucky, he might just about be able to make it to the end of this race without having to actually serve that penalty in the pits. And if he can, he should be able to appeal it post-race and get it removed, because that only came about as a consequence from Melis diving down the inside at the chicane. And if he can get it removed, that means that this is still on full position and worth Fender taking the time to defend it. And I imagine if he does look to appeal that penalty, he will probably also be looking to make some sort of appeal towards Melis as well. As I'll tell you what, something that's changed, Brewer has overtaken Giacomelli for what is now P3. Giacomelli trying to regain the position on the run up towards turn 1, only a couple of laps left in this race, but the BMW, we didn't quite catch in all the other chaos that we've had going on in this race how that took place, as Giacomelli was dropping back. He had a very slow lap last time round, so it wasn't too long ago, 53.6, and in the process Brewer has made his way through into a podium spot.
Yeah, it must have happened somewhere in Sector 3 just before Europe Car, because I mean that's where I jumped back to on the replay, and the move was already done. And so, yeah, I'm not sure what happened. Maybe a mistake sort of just after the chicane, the hairpin,
Sorry
possibly.
to cut you off there, Tim. We've got Fang now versus Shops on the run up towards turn 1. Battle for P11. Oh, I thought there was going to be contact there between those two. And, of course, Fang, remember, in with a chance of this championship. P2 in the standings right now. There's going to be a lot of shuffling in the order overall by the time it finishes today. And in the end, actually ends up dropping back a couple of car lengths from the Honda. But the man that right now is having the time of his life at the front of his field with, I think, what will be the final lap after he next crosses the line. We'll start the final lap. Max Florence, 8.5-second lead at the front, and with Fender having taken himself out of the race with that stop-and-go 30-second penalty, this number 42 car has not looked back.
No, just got to keep it clean for one more lap, and then it's all gravy for him. Someone who's done really well is Fazekas as well. Still running in 8th place in the least favourable car in the game.
17 positions gained from Fazekas.
I think
absolutely triumphant. I think this is almost his trademark this season. I think just use a sort of fairly poor, in relative terms, qualifying pace, but racecraft and race pace, second to none as Mellis and Fender make contact again on the apex of turn 10, flashing the lights there from the Italian driver. Both of them were just on the racing line, but I imagine Mellis may be feeling like he's just being held up now by Fender, but these two have really come to blows over the last 2 laps. As there's a yellow flag out for the 910 car, that is Arnel Brun that's around in a very weird part of the circuit. What on earth has happened there to the Ferrari? He was over the AstroTurf, about halfway down the straight between turn 9 and 10, and then has just completely lost it and has now dropped several positions. So very curious incident for the Ferrari. Fender comes into the pit, so he has had to serve that drive-through penalty before the end of the race. That is a big disappointment for him. So even if he can't appeal that anymore now, I was hoping it would maybe just stretch a little bit further, but unfortunately not quite. But Max Florence, your race leader, entering the final sector in that half-and-half livery car, and what a drive it has been from him today.
Yeah, so Max Florence and the Alpha Bull Honda doing a really, really good job. What I was saying earlier on quickly about Fazekas is I feel like I can't choose him as my racer of the day again, but he just keeps putting on these bizarre performances as Florence comes on through. So here we go, running to the line now, coming up to that final time, and there it is, crosses the line. Brilliant race from him this evening. Richie coming across the line in just a moment as well, closely followed by Brewer. To be fair, Brewer really broke away in that last section after getting past Giacomelli. Really seemed to come alive.
Last lap scrap, in towards turn 10. J-Fang trying to send up the inside of Shops. The Honda firm defense. Neuwirth getting involved in this as well. Of course, a man has had a very busy race, but I think Shops has just about managed to do enough. That was very hard but fair racing in actual fact. Fang now under pressure from the Aston Martin, the 63 car that is really perhaps driving in anger, and I have a horrible feeling we may have a dive up towards the inside at the final chicane. Will we? And we won't. The BMW will hold that position, I do believe, to the line. And what a busy day it has been for a couple of our championship protagonists.
Yeah, everything all over the place this time round. Obviously, yeah, Angus Fender having to go into the pits, and Mellis manages to cross the line in 16th place in the end. Is there any last-minute battles going on? Everyone reasonably split up. Just on board with Rumbold and Rattiani now as they come across the line in 19th and 20th place, respectively. Matt York up to 21st. And so the man we really thought was going to bring this home, Angus Fender, currently running in 24th place, no one around him after serving that drive-through. I imagine he'll be very upset about that. That was not the way he would have wanted that race to end. And I think that's pretty much our last driver come across the line now in the form of Brun, who actually nearly stopped before he got to the line. I thought he was just going to stop for a minute there, but there we go. He decided to keep going right the way to the end. But that all went a bit crazy at the end, didn't it? So final results: first place was Florence, second place Richie, third place Brewer, fourth place Giacomelli, fifth place Avelay, Sixth place is Niles, Rangers in seventh, Fazakas eighth, Nicholas Hertz in ninth, and rounding out the top 10 is Tarin. Good race from Tarin actually this evening. I think that might be one of his best finishes, if I am not mistaken.
Yeah, actual fact, he hasn't scored any points this season, unfortunately, the Spaniard. He had 3 DNFs in a row and a no-show at Bathurst last week. So I think, categorically, without a shadow of doubt, his best result of the season so far.
I mean, fantastic effort from everyone all round. Obviously, we did see a couple of less than ideal moves, and obviously that first lap incident, I imagine we will see some sort of investigation going on there. Obviously, if any of the drivers put it in. I say, again, I am going to stress, because sometimes the YouTube chat gets a little bit upset that when incidents go on. Obviously, here in Tier 2, everything is done post-race. So if a driver is involved in an incident, you can put in a request, I want this looked at. The racing stewards will look at that, and then if they deem a penalty worthwhile, a time penalty and license points may be applied. But I must stress this, if people do not put in requests, then nothing gets looked at. You have to request it to be looked at, as there is 9 tiers of racing going on this evening. So if you don't say, I had an incident, lap 1, I want it looked at, people won't be looking at it. So it can be a bit confusing sometimes when you see incidents go on and nothing seems to come out of it. It's simply because either the drivers have a word with each other and it all gets sorted outside of the penalty system, or some drivers just don't care. They're here for the fun, and if a bit of an incident happens, a bit of an incident happens. That is the joy of sim racing. No one gets injured. There's no sort of monetary harm done. It's all just left on the track. And the Tier 2 drivers are pretty good at just leaving incidents on the track. It doesn't tend to get too heated in the Discord, which is always nice.
Sometimes there's a few discussions from time to time, but for the most part, it's all pretty friendly. I've also just been doing some quick maths in the background, which is always a very dangerous thing, but I do believe, now, if my calculations are correct, now this is a big if, and we shall see a bit more clearly when we head to Suzuka for next week, but I believe that your new championship leader, having moved up from 8th in the standings, is Richie. With that P2 finish, he, I believe, will be your new championship leader, followed up by Alejandro Avale, then Jay Fang, and then Seminara, who only scored 5 points in that race in the end, finishing down in 26th position, will have ended up dropping down to P4. I haven't quite been able to run through too many more numbers than that, but I said that this could be a pivotal day for Richie, and he has capitalised incredibly on all of the carnage and chaos that happened for Seminara, going on to the slick tyres. He was on for a really decent result that would have really consolidated his championship lead, and he went to the slick tyres. Just an unfortunate strategic mistake in programming the pit strategy in, and that has cost him 3 positions in the standings. Jay Fang involved in the lap 1 incident, wearing, I think he had his stop-and-go 30-second penalty. Casangina was involved in that lap 1 carnage. Today has been such a dynamic, it's almost like Marmite for the drivers today. You have either had a wonderful day and really boosted your championship hopes, or you have had one of the worst races of your season and have lost out a lot. But I do believe that is the way that these things are going to play out after today, and makes it really very interesting going into the last couple of rounds of this championship.
Yeah, it's definitely all to play for in this latter half of the season. Normally at this point, we'd be hoping that someone might jump in the old commentary booth and have a chat with us, but nobody wanting to have a chat. I'm going to come out and say my driver of the day. The easy one is Fazakas because of that ridiculous effort, but I feel like I've given him a lot of limelight. I'm actually going to give it to Giacomelli, my driver of the day. Qualified all the way down in 14th place. And obviously we saw him have an incident early in the race as well, that lap 1. So to get it all the way up to 4th place, it's 10 places gained, and he really did have to fight hammer and tooth to get all the way there. So yeah, absolutely fair play to him. Really good bit of driving by him. So he's going to get my driver of the day. John, do you have any shining stars you want to give a quick shout out to?
I do, and I actually want to give a big shout out to Chris Zikos in the number 99 Mercedes. He gained 20 positions in that race to finish in P11 in a car that is inherently not the easiest to get around this circuit, let alone under these conditions. And when we look at his previous racing record, he has had a 30th, a 27th, and is unfortunately the driver that is last in the standings to have a non-zero amount of points. He's down in 39th position, but today he kept himself out of trouble, he lapped cleanly and consistently, and he got that number 99 Mercedes up just outside of the top 10. And I think that considering his sort of topsy-turvy, mostly, unfortunately, at kind of the lower end of the grid throughout the first 4 races of this season, I think that is a fantastic effort from the British driver. So maybe one that didn't get a huge amount of screen time because he just kind of kept himself to himself. But when you have a race like that, when you've got all the chaos taking place, sometimes that is actually the best way to go about it and bring through a fantastic points haul. So for me, I think that's a stellar drive from the number 99 car today.
Wow, I think on that one we'll probably call it a day then, John. It's a brilliant effort, as you said, there from Zikos. I think we'll call it a day. So we are over to Suzuka next time round. My brain completely broke then. We are back on Tuesday evening. 7:30 is the start of qualifying again, so please join us then on Tuesday. Going to be a great race there as well. Suzuka always gives us absolutely fantastic wheel-to-wheel racing, some super technical corners, some really high-speed areas of that track as well. So all the cars really come to life. Again, thank you to all the racers. Thank you to our sponsors as well. And a massive thank you to John for joining me in the booth.
Oh, well, always a pleasure, mate. And yeah, looking forward to next week without a shadow of doubt, because Suzuka, great action, great circuit, legendary driver's track, and a fantastic balance, I think, for certain cars as well. Porsches, Hondas, Mercedes, Ferraris are all going to be pretty competitive there. I think even the BMWs might have a chance of that one as well. So I think we're going to be on for a cracker next week and really just carry on the momentum from an epic race today. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Good night.